Hey there, and welcome back to another episode of Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at 10, count them 10, Magic the Gathering cards and tell you if they're any good in the Pauper format or not. I can't remember exactly how all these episodes come out and when I said different things, but I believe I said, hey, we're so close to 250 subscribers. Can we get there? And I'm pretty sure in between the time that I asked that and and when episodes actually started coming out, we crossed it already. So I think I probably asked for 250 subscribers when I already had like 255 or something. Sorry about that, but thank you all for subscribing. That's very exciting. So let's do what you came here for and take a look at some common Magic the Gathering cards. How does that sound? Let's see what our first card of the day is. It is March of the Returned. This is not a very good card, but I kind of like it anyway. March of the Returned is 3 and a black for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so it's a Raise Dead, but it's 2 Raise Deads on a single card, but it costs 4 times as much as a Raise Dead. That's not very good. That's not very good at all. It also reminds me of a card called Macabre Waltz, which this is closer. I mean, it's 1 and a black for a sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand, but then you have to discard a card. I think this is closer to a good rate than this is. I think this is a terrible rate, which is sad to me because I actually really like the themes of Theros. And I certainly like these guys with the gold mask. I don't know the flavor and the story stuff around them, but I do like them. So I just like looking at a card like this, but I don't actually like the card. I think a lot of cards in Theros feel really poorly costed, or really not poorly costed. They feel really uncompetitive in their costs. And for the Pauper format, something like this is just not very good at all. In the Pauper format specifically, we have a card called Blood Fountain. And this card is the way to get back a couple creatures, single black mana to come in, then you pay 4 and you return up to 2 target creatures. And I know that sounds like, wow, isn't that worse? But it's an artifact that you can play on turn 1 that actually makes a second artifact, and that's really good for a lot of different decks. And then you get that same kind of effect, but you get that later at instant speed, and you just feel a whole lot better about this. And it's also pretty easy to get this back from your graveyard to your hand with something like Leon and Squire, which is not something you're going to be able to as easily do with March of the Returned. It's fine. It's nice to get 2 creatures back to your hand. It can be really useful to be able to do something like that. It's kind of like drawing 2 cards, but it's kind of like tutoring 2 cards in a way. You can dredge decks, I suppose, can put a bunch of creatures in their graveyard and then use this to go grab a couple back. Like you know what a Raise Dead does. So to have Raise Dead times 2, but mana cost times 4, that is really the big sticking point. And I can't get behind it. We have too many other cards that do this kind of thing, but better. And so I'm going to end up giving this I'll give it a 2. I don't want to dip down into the 1s, but it's not a very good Magic card. Angelic Purge is 2 and a white for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a permanent, and you exile target artifact, creature, or enchantment. This would not actually be that bad if it was costed better. Very similar to the last card. We see plenty of these kinds of effects in black. Eaten Alive and Worthy Cost, and so many other cards like that where you have to sacrifice a creature or an artifact, and then you get to destroy or exile usually just a creature or planeswalker, I guess, sometimes in black. Not that matters for our format. But this one allowing you to exile an artifact, a creature, or an enchantment is really nice. I just don't want to have to pay a 3rd mana for that. I already have ways of exiling things for cheaper. I guess I don't have access of exiling those things at altogether. Like I can exile an artifact, or I can exile an enchantment, or I can exile a creature, but to be able to have all of those options on a single card, I guess I understand why it costs as much as it does. But I really don't like that it's sorcery speed. I don't like that I have to sacrifice a permanent and it still costs 3 mana. I feel like the sacrifice in a permanent is such an additional cost, even though it could be kind of turned into an upside for many decks. And if you're playing it, it probably should be an upside. I still just feel like this is too overcosted for what it does. I think the sorcery thing might kill it the most, even more than the mana cost. If I could do that at instant speed, I might be willing to pay 3 mana for this. But 3 mana at sorcery speed, no, no, I don't think I will. I'm gonna go with a 2 point. I'll still go for like a 2.9 because it can exile a lot of different problem permanents, and I do like that. But man, the cost and the speed are just a bad combo. Cinderstorm is 6 and a red for a sorcery. Cinderstorm deals 7 damage to any target. um, Usually, if you cost this much, there's a way to reduce the cost somewhere because these are ridiculous costs. But not here. We also got our 3rd sorcery in a row, which is interesting. 7 damage to any target is a lot of damage for sure. You can kill just about anything in this format for that. But ugh, imagine paying 7 mana to try to kill a Tolarian Terror, and then your opponent goes, "Actually, could you pay a couple more because it's got the ward?" Yeah, this is bad. I mean, 7 damage for 7 mana is a bad rate in a format that has Lightning Bolt, in a format that even has Shock. It, it's kind of embarrassing to do this little damage for that amount of mana that you're putting in. I mean, Lava Axe, I suppose, is 5 mana for 5 damage. That 5 damage can only go to a player. So Lava Axe is actually really bad, despite how much I love Lava Axe just from casting it so many times as a kid. But Cinder Storm, I can't possibly. Also, it's a card that says Storm in it, but it doesn't have any Storm mechanics to it. That's come on, what are you doing? Cinder Storm, I've got to give like a 1.72. This is, you will never cast this. It costs so much. You're not getting to this amount of mana in your Pauper deck, and you're just not casting the spell. Even if you had that mana, you can cast a different spell that probably wins you the game, and this doesn't win you the game unless your opponent's at 7 life. Fume Spitter. I'm pretty sure we've done this because I remember seeing this incredibly grotesque and still somewhat beautiful art. But we'll do it again because it's been a while. Fume Spitter is a single black mana for a 1/1 Phyrexian horror. You can sacrifice this creature and put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. That is a little bit like, and we talked about this one before as well, or something else that reminded us of this. But the Festering Goblin is kind of similar because this is a 1/1. When it dies, creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn, and this one actually gives a counter, and you can sacrifice it. So this is just better. It is really just straight up better. I guess that's not exactly true because Festering Goblin, you could block with it, and so it dealt a damage to the opponent, and then it died, and then you could give that other creature, that same creature, -1/-1, and it can die. So you can take out their 2/2 or something like that. You wouldn't be able to do that with Fume Spitter, but I think I still like Fume Spitter better, just as a card that is able to sacrifice itself. It gets a decent dies trigger. Like I do like the -1/-1 counter. I think that is pretty useful, especially in decks that can do proliferate things. But if you're doing proliferate things, you're probably just in Poison Storm in Pauper, so you probably don't need this. Um, it probably functions a little bit more like a Sakura Tribe Elder when you think about it, as something that can prevent a bunch of damage because it blocks, and then before damage actually happens, you sacrifice it and give the -1/-1 counter to whatever. But that is probably the better comparison. And Sakura Tribelder, while a fantastic card, is not a card that sees a ton of play in the Pauper format. That is, it spent more of its time as a commander card. Um, it's still neat. I still like it. Hmm. I'm willing to go to like a 2.4. Like it's not a very good card exactly, but I do kind of like it, and it is frightening. But I like the colors. I like the I like the kind of aqua and pinks, and it kind of looks like when you're looking into a pool of gasoline and you just kind of get those rainbow colors to it. Yeah. This thing looks terrible. I love it. Next is oh god, Final Fantasy names. Kikirn. I that is probably not. I don't play Final Fantasy 11. I've never played Final Fantasy 11. I'm not going to. I'm not an MMO guy. But this merchant is 2 and a blue for a 1/4 beast citizen. You can pay 1 tap to draw a card, then discard a card, or you can pay 7 tap and sacrifice this creature to draw 3 cards. But this ability costs 1 less to activate for each town you control. And Final Fantasy gave us a number of town cards. Most of them were dual lands. The ones that are in the Pauper format are all dual lands. That's not true. I think there might actually be no, because there's like the adventurers in. Never mind. There's some other towns that aren't just the duels in the Pauper format. So you could make this work. I just don't know why you would. Why would you want to put this in your Pauper deck? A 3 mana 1/4 is a pretty bad rate. We have better rates than that on cards in blue. So that makes that kind of bad. You have to pay for the Merfolk Looter effect. No, thank you. Like Merfolk Looter is just in this format. I don't need to pay for that at all. There's plenty of ways to loot in blue in the Pauper format. I don't need to be paying and tapping my creature to have to do that. That kind of sucks. And then the 7 mana ability, you're never gonna pay 7 for this because that's ridiculous. The game should be over by then, I would think. But being able to sack a guy to draw 3 cards is all right. You would have to play towns though. Most towns come into play tapped. All the duels do anyway. Eh, I just don't know what deck ever would want this. That's probably the bigger problem. Where are you putting this? Sure, it can loot, so you could make an argument that it could go in terror as a thing to just keep filling your graveyard. Maybe it goes into something where you can have madness on some cards or flashback on some cards, and so discarding cards actually isn't a big deal. Maybe. I just think it's too bad generally, and I would never want to play this. I think all the stuff costs too much. I think the creature costs too much. I think both of the abilities cost too much. I'm not a fan. I'll go for a 2.2, and I don't even feel good about that score, honestly. Scrap, we did that recently, and it's cool. Looks cool. It's not a very good card, but it looks cool. Let's just skip that one. To Sliver Construct. Sliver Construct is 3 mana for a 2/2 artifact creature. Sliver Construct. It is what it says. We've seen from Time Spiral Venser's Sliver, which is a 5 mana 3/3 sliver. That's plain, and this is also a plain sliver. But the idea is, if you have other slivers out there, this one at least starts a little beefier. Most slivers are 1/1s. So this one comes onto the table and it's like, ooh, this is a 2/2, and now it gets all those fun stats that you were getting before. So that's good? That's good? And the answer is nah, not really. It's not really all that good. paying 3 mana for a vanilla sliver. Nah. Because slivers, every sliver you play, you want to benefit all of your slivers, and this one doesn't really. I mean, there's sliver cards out there that just care about the number of slivers you have, so I guess in that way it kind of does. But for the most part, this is just another thing you play, and if your opponent kills the slivers that are giving it keywords, this thing just goes back to being a completely vanilla thing, and that's not really conducive to your game plan. Yeah, in the Pauper format specifically, the Slivers decks are mostly Selesnya based. And then you can dabble a little bit into something like red or blue to get some first strike or some trample or some flying, whichever one you need at that instant. But I don't think you're ever gonna want a colorless vanilla sliver in that deck. So I think this is like a 1.5 because it is just really bad. You're paying a whole extra mana for a grizzly bear, and that really is all it does on a lot of boards. I don't particularly like this at all. Next up is Ambush for 3 and a red. It's an instant. Blocking creatures gain first strike until end of turn. Huh. Not a not a very red ability, I think. This was in Homeland, so this is kind of before the colored pie had been established and has solidified into what it is today. But this is very much more a white ability these days. I think if they reprinted a card or they printed a card that was exactly like Ambush, this would 100% be a white card. In red, it feels really weird because red's the color of like aggressive attacking. So I I don't want to keep my creatures up to block and then give them first strike when my opponent attacks because I want to just keep attacking. I'm the color of haste. I'm the color of getting in. What does this do for me? And I don't think it does much for you. I think this is a bad card. I think this would even be a bad card in white, but I think this is an especially bad card in red. So I'm going to give it a like a 1.2. Should I just give it a 1? No, it's not so heinous that it's hurting you, but it's really not helping you. I think we will go with the 1.2. Bad card. Cool art, but bad card. Oof. Retrofitted Transmigrant. I was looking at this card somewhat recently. Single black mana, like not here, but like off with like looking through my own cards. Retrofitted Transmigrant is a single black mana for a 1/1 artifact creature zombie. You can pay 3 and a black to return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped with 2+1/+1 counters on it. I think that's pretty cool. Modern Horizons 3 cards, so it's pushed, right? But this is the comparison that I can give to it is reassembling skeleton. And this is 2 mana for a 1/1, but you can pay 1 and a black and return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. So using that as a comparison, this thing is cheaper to get on the table to begin with. It's 1 mana 1/1 instead of a 2 mana 1/1. That feels better to me. And then when it dies, maybe it's later enough in the game that you can pay this cost to get it back onto the battlefield. And you can do this at instant speed, so you can even hold up your removal spells in black. And if your opponent doesn't do anything that requires removal, now you can use this ability to bring this guy back from your graveyard to the battlefield. And that can feel okay. And 4 mana doesn't feel as bad because I mean you could argue that hey, this is only 2 mana to get back onto the battlefield. And yeah, you're right. But this comes back with 2 counters. And I think a 3/3. I know it's kind of like saying, hey, I can get a 3/3 for 4 mana, and that's not a very good rate. But being able to kind of guarantee that you get a 3/3 whenever you need it is pretty good, especially when you could do that instant speed. I know it's instant speed, but it comes back tap, so you're not like instant speed blocking with it. But just being able to get a 3/3 back before your turn, it kind of like has pseudo haste at that point too, or pseudo flash. Um, I do like that. I like a lot about this. I like that this is something that can trigger any of your hey, a card left your graveyard effects. Like we don't have insidious roots in this format, but the idea that you could make this work with an insidious roots if you were playing a deck that had that, or other effects like an insidious roots, this is able to help make that work. If you have a ton of mana, you can use this you can sacrifice this and then bring it back, and then sacrifice this and bring it back all in the same turn. So maybe you have some kind of impact tremor style effect where you're able to just keep looping this thing. That costs a lot of mana to do, though. Reassembling skeleton, if it was available in Pauper, would probably be the better option there, just as something cheaper to bring back each time. But there is something kind of interesting about it. I really don't hate this card. It's not. I mean, if it was going to go in any deck, it would go into the mono black sacrifice deck. And it's not really going there because we have so many cheap creatures that just make a creature token when they die. So you're kind of getting the first. You choose your option. Do you want to have the infestation sage, which your carrion feeder can sacrifice once, makes another token? Your carrion feeder can sacrifice twice, or can sacrifice a second time, and now you gotten 2 tokens. Or do you want to pay 1 mana to put this on the table, same cost as an infestation sage, sacrifice it with your carrion feeder, and then have to wait to pay 4 to bring this back to sacrifice to your carrion feeder? No, you'll just take the 2 ahead of time. You'll take the 2 very quickly that you can do for a single mana, and then it's fine that it's in your graveyard. You don't really care. You don't want to keep paying this amount of mana to get this thing back. It's cute, it's interesting, but it's not really all that Pauper playable. I'm going to go for a 2.6. I still like it, though. Spike Jester is a Rakdos mana, or a red and or a black and a red, rather, for a 3/1 Goblin Warrior with haste. That's it. This card originally was uncommon. Not sure why. A 3/1 haste is always a good ability, but haste isn't trample, you know? So a 3/1 that can just be chump blocked by anything and then both the creatures die. Okay. Cool, I guess. Kind of feels like a waste of mana. Yeah, this is basically a vanilla card. The cost is probably about right, but the creature itself is just too bad. I think this is a 2.3, maybe even a 2.2. Ogre Menial is 3 and a red for a 0/4 Phyrexian Ogre with Infect. Interesting, with 0 power. But that means this creature deals damage to creatures in the form of -1/-1 counters and to players in the form of poison counters, but it has fire breathing on it. That's cool. So you can pay a red, and this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. That is a cool idea. That, hey, here's a 0 power creature. So does your opponent really want to block it or not? And if they choose not to block it, then you can just pump it up with the fire breathing. So they feel like they have to block. But then it's a 0/4, so it's probably living, because it's a lot of toughness for this format. And you could just fire breathe it enough to put enough counters on the opposing. And even if it would die to the opponent, you can fire breathe it enough. Well, I guess it doesn't have first strike, so that wouldn't work. You wouldn't be able to put enough poison, or you wouldn't be able to put enough -1/-1 counters in time for the opponent's creatures not to kill you at the same time. This needs first strike. that would make the card way cooler. This is still a cool design, though. I like that it forces your opponent to make difficult decisions. I like that it has. This is an unfair comparison, but I like that it has an ATOG style effect of just, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna not? Okay, I'll spend all my resources to make this thing into a killer if you're not gonna respect it. That's cool. The card itself isn't that good. 4 mana for this creature to begin with is a pretty bad rate. I kind of just wish it had a point of power to begin with. Like, give me something to work with here. Because now I do feel like I have to keep putting in mana every time, which means I'm not putting mana into other potential things that might help me win the game faster or more effectively. Red is not really known as the infect deck, so I don't think there's a whole lot of other infect support that you're going to get from red in the Pauper format. That is much more of a blue and black kind of thing for Pauper. Green sometimes, even white sometimes. I think red is maybe the worst color for Infect. Hmm. But it is damn interesting. So I'm gonna give it I'm gonna give this a 3. Yeah, I think I'm gonna give this a 3. Neat card. Bonus card, and then we'll call it a day. Infantry Veteran. We did this one. We've done this one before. I remember seeing this guy's face. It's a single white mana for a human soldier. You can tap it, and target attacking creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn. That's okay. I need this to say attacking or blocking creature. I don't know why it doesn't in white, but it's not very good, but it's not terrible either. We've done it before, so I'll skip and do a different bonus card instead. Pin to the Earth. This is new to us. 1 in a blue for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets -6, -0. That is a pretty good minus. Um, this isn't good though. And we've had this conversation a bunch of times before about these different kind of removal in enchantment auras. Most of these things will tap a creature and then force them to either spend some resources to untap it or just don't allow the creature to untap to begin with. You'll get some like unable to scream that will kind of transmogrify the creature into a 0/2 or something like that. You see other forms of removal that will destroy the creature and put in, a frog lizard or a um, ape, right? Pongify. But then you also sometimes get these that just take away their power, but it leaves up their toughness. It still allows it to tap for abilities. It, it is a great power drain for sure. It takes a Boulder Branch Golem from a 6/5 to a 0/5, and that feels real good when you make that happen. But it still feels pretty bad to allow that to be a 0/5 to keep blocking your creatures. Yeah, I just can't. I can't give this a good score. There are just better ones out here. You should still just play Blossom Bind. That is the best in class of these kinds of cards right now in blue. Yeah, this is going to get a 2.3, I think. That'll be it for today. Thanks for joining me. Thanks again for 250, and I look forward to continuing to give you guys more of these moving forward. So, till then.